Liners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in my big opinion, whilst the waiting list for treatment spirals, the NHS tells its menopausal staff to stay at home and do lighter duties. Our health service has lost the plot. My Mark Meets guest is Elvis Presley's biographer, who tells his incredible story after 10. In the big question, with a winter of discontent looming, should the government make it harder to go on strike? And is Black Friday a con? Also, should footballers ditch the rainbow flag? We'll speak to a gay man who thinks they should. And does society demonise people on benefits? And how about this one? After a man is fired for not socialising after work, do you have to be friends with your colleagues? Well, I love everyone here at GB News, especially Bethany Elsey, who we stole from Sky. She's got the 9 p.m. headlines.
And I'm very happy to be here. Mark, thank you. I'm Bethany Elsey, here to bring you up with the latest from GB News. The Prime Minister has said he has enormous respect for nurses, but their pay demands of 19% are simply unaffordable. Staff in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will walk out for 2 days on the 15th and 20th of December in their first national strike in over a century. The Royal College of Nursing has accused the government of rejecting formal talks as an alternative to industrial action. But Rishi Sunak says he's hopeful they can find a resolution.
I know things are difficult right now for everyone because of what's happening with inflation, and that's why our plans that we outlined last week will get a grip of inflation and bring it down. That's really important. And in the meantime, what the unions are asking for, I think, is a 19% pay rise. And I think most people watching will recognise that that's obviously unaffordable, and that's why I'm pleased that the Health Secretary is sitting down, talking to the union, and hopefully we can find a way through this.
Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the government is shirking its responsibilities.
Nurses have been driven to this by the government, and that's a badge of shame for the government. They've never taken strike action before. And for patients, this is going to be devastating news. Nurses don't want to go on strike.
Meanwhile, teachers in Scotland will strike for a further 16 days next year in a dispute over pay. The Educational Institute of Scotland says the consecutive days of action will be split across every council in the country across January and February. It's after yesterday's strike closed nearly all primary and secondary schools. The Foreign Secretary has announced a new support package for Ukraine as the country is still experiencing blackouts after the latest round of Russian airstrikes. During his first official trip to Kiev, James Cleverly pledged 35 more emergency vehicles and a further £3 million to help rebuild the country.
Ultimately, I think it's incredibly important that the UK demonstrates to the Ukrainian people, who are bearing the brunt of this brutality from Russia, that we are standing shoulder to shoulder with them through our military support, through our humanitarian support, through our economic support, but also through the visible support.
And to the World Cup now, England have missed out on a chance to secure a place in the final 16 after a 0-0 draw against the USA in Qatar. The result means both England and Wales can still qualify for the knockout stages when the two teams meet in the final group game on Tuesday evening. Well, we'll just have to wait and see. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Mark.
My thanks to Bethany Elsey, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In the big question, with a winter of discontent looming, should the government make it harder to strike? My Mark Meets guest is Elvis Presley's biographer, who tells his incredible story after 10. And in the news agenda with my panel and top guests, is Black Friday a con? We'll speak to a top retail expert who's got the inside track. Look at that cooker hood. Blimey. Holly, I've got cooker hood envy. Get rid of that strap. Look at that beauty. That's at least 500 quid's worth. Should footballers ditch the rainbow flag? We'll speak to a gay man and political commentator who thinks we should. Also, does society demonise people on benefits? And after a man is fired for not socialising after work, do you have to be friends with your colleagues? Are you mates with your work pals? Reacting to those stories and many more are my brilliant panel tonight, all of whom are friends of mine. Legendary journalist Nina Mishkov, top political commentator and student Alice Grant, and the brilliant comedian and panto star Andy Ford. I want to hear from you throughout the show. Mark at gbnews.uk. The best bit of my show is when you get in touch. And this programme has a golden rule. Do you know what that rule is? We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So for the next 2 hours, big debates, big guests, and always big opinions. And unlike England, I always score. Let's start with this. Big news from the NHS today, and this will get you hot under the collar. Menopausal women working in the health service will be offered the opportunity to work from home or do lighter duties, according to the Chief Executive of NHS England, Amanda Pritchard. Now, I'm no expert on the management of health systems, and I'm very supportive of the millions of women who go through the hell of menopause. But encouraging the staff of an already diabolically overstretched service to work from home and do less work doesn't seem like the best prescription. Meanwhile, the Mail newspaper report that GPs want to reduce their working hours to 9 a.m. to 5 p.m, claiming that longer days discriminate against those with families. Family doctors who earn over £110,000 a year on average will now lobby the NHS to change core opening hours in general practice from the current 8 a.m. to 6:30, Monday to Friday, which means that services are cut by 2.5 hours a day, making it even harder for patients to be seen. And with the NHS costing £13,000 per household per annum and amounting to 40% of day-to-day government spending having jumped from 30% 10 years ago, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to want my money back. When you pay your taxes, you're expecting doctors and nurses, not middle managers, who make up almost half of NHS employees. You're not expecting diversity teams for what is the most diverse organisation out there. And you don't pay for rainbow pedestrian crossings outside of hospitals. You reap what you sow, and the NHS, whose doctors and nurses we all love, has brought this crisis onto itself. For 2.5 years, they became the National COVID Service, ignoring far worse illnesses like cancer and type 2 diabetes. In the name of COVID, the NHS, as an organisation, became obsessed with the elimination of this one disease and became truly heartless as others begged for treatment for much more serious ailments. During the pandemic, the NHS lost its heart, it lost its mind, and it lost its head. And now, as they face a self-inflicted backlog of 7 million people seeking treatment, they want to send menopausal NHS workers home and give them lighter duties. This as nurses announce strikes on the 15th and 20th of December. We love the nurses and they deserve the pay rise. But the country is broke because of a diabolical overreaction to a seasonal respiratory virus. We borrowed £500 billion to pay perfectly healthy people to stay at home and closed once viable businesses. I don't recall any of the nursing unions speaking out against these ruinous and failed measures to stop a virus. The nurses and doctors who work in the NHS and the cooks, the cleaners, the porters and reception staff are the best we have. But the system is not fit for purpose. It's irrevocably broken in a crisis of its own making. It stopped treating people for over 2 years and now look where we are, with hundreds more dying of cancer and heart disease every week than previously would. And unlike COVID, these diseases aren't exclusively related to the old and clinically vulnerable. Now the likes of a young mother must say goodbye to her kids because she couldn't get that lump checked during lockdown. And with cash-strapped Brits now so desperate they're paying for private treatment, the NHS is losing its moral authority too. With people paying for private treatment, the NHS risks becoming like the BBC, a service many don't use, but one everyone's got to pay for. And don't forget, if you're paying for private treatment, you're paying twice, given that you've already paid your taxes for the NHS. It's enough to make you sick. The brilliant Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson quoted one of her readers this week, Hannah, who emailed the paper to say her 2-year-old son is struggling to breathe, that's right, struggling to breathe and swallow food, but is only offered a telephone appointment in the near future with an ENT consultant. The estimated wait for a tonsillectomy? 2.5 years. 2.5 years. It should be 2.5 weeks. And in terms of its dire performance, try getting a GP appointment this side of Christmas. A lack of money isn't an excuse anymore, as most people accept the service is now an endless money pit. A radical rethink is essential and nothing is off the table. But we can't go on like this, that is clear. The NHS is on life support. It has a simple choice: change or die. What's your view, Mark, at gbnews.uk? I'll get to your emails shortly, but let's get the views now of my brilliant panel. We have political commentator and student Alice Grant, legendary journalist Nina Mishkov, and the brilliant comedian and panto star Andy Ford. Now, Alice Grant, let's talk about this policy announced by the Chief Executive of NHS England to send women with menopause home and give them lighter duties. As I mentioned in my Big Opinion monologue, I'm very sympathetic to women that go through often awful symptoms of the menopause, but I'm worried that with a waiting list of 7 million people seeking treatment, this is probably the wrong policy.
Mark, you're entirely right, and I also really agree with your monologue earlier, especially when you were talking about how heartless the NHS became during the pandemic. But we also need to look at the root of this problem, which I really believe is incompetent government policy. They were the ones, the government, who drove the lockdown crisis, and now they're saying that we can't afford to give a pay rise to our British nurses when we're sending billions of our money to Ukraine in new packages and for climate reparations and for net zero, and yet we can't afford to give a pay rise to our nurses, yet we're spending so much money to the tunes of trillions for other things which aren't as important to us. So
Well, Alice Grant, I believe in the principle of the NHS. I think the American system is terrible. I don't want to live in a country where if you get run over or have a heart attack, you've got to show your credit card. But I would argue that this current system is not working and we need to have a national conversation.
Absolutely. And I think that this starts with the government actually reassessing the way it's treated the NHS. They forced us to clap for it and yet aren't willing to support NHS nurses and we're firing those who refuse to take a vaccine. So there's definitely a double standard going on here, and I think our politicians should be held more accountable for this.
Nina Mishkov, nurses going on strike, 2 specific dates in December. Other health professionals suffering menopause symptoms will be working from home and doing lighter duties. That's not going to help with the backlog of 7 million people waiting for treatment.
Well, you say that, Mark, but I'm the only one here. You may well give lip service and say you're sympathetic to menopausal women, but you can't possibly know. You can't empathise in the situation. You don't know what the menopause is like, and with respect, neither can Alice and neither can Andy. I can tell you that the menopause is nothing to be just shrugged off. It can last for years and years and years. And it's about time that society, and finally, is recognising what women go through and how debilitating, demoralising, dispiriting, depressing the menopause can be. And physically, you know, there's brain fog, there's also, you know, there's just the hot and cold, there's everything that, you know. So, but if you recognise that women finally are getting some kind of recognition for what they suffer and the debilitating things they do, then you must also go back to the time when women didn't get maternity leave. Women got pregnant and then had to leave their jobs and look after their children, and their jobs were not safe for them to, you know, saved for them to come back to. Well, this is society finally recognising that women's physical and mental and emotional needs at this time of change must be taken into account. It's not saying that every woman should be sent home, you know, lie on the sofa and with a cold compress on her head because she's menopausal. That's not it at all. It's just a recognition that there must be you know, sort of some kind of account taken, so that if you're working in the hospital, then you can have a lighter, not such a heavier uniform, that there are fans if you're too hot, that if you're very, you know, explosive in your temperament, that there is probably a reason for it. You know, it's not something to be taken lightly. And I understand. I personally believe that the organisation of the National Health Service is at fault. I agree that it's a money pit, but there is another aspect to this. The government, I believe, are running it down. They're not helping it. They're letting it run down so that eventually we can have it privatised by great American pharma companies. That's what I think. That's at the back of it. But I would like to see a National Health Service where you can get a GP appointment, that it's working 7 days a week, that people don't have to go to A&E just for something that they could have got from their GP practice. We don't have the health service that we deserve and that we are paying for. And that is, I agree with Alice, it's the government fault.
Well, let's bring Andy Ford into this. Andy, what's your view? I take on board everything that Nina has said, but there are many women battling with the menopause in the private sector who won't get a sniff of this level of support.
Well, it's a very hard-hitting subject, and I'm going to try and use all my experience as a pantomime comedian to sort it out for you.
Good luck with that.
I am married to a wonderful lady who has been going through the menopause for quite a long time now. And men, we have never known how a lady's body works or what she feels. We never have. We don't now, so excuse the pun, no change there. And so whoever's been making the decisions at the top of NHS, it should only be ladies. Blokes should be nowhere near this subject. I mean, you learn when you live with a lady that's going through the menopause. I mean, my wife would sit on the sofa and we're watching the telly, and then suddenly the cardigan comes off and I'm just concentrating on the telly, not even thinking, and I say, "Are you hot?" And she say, "No, I'm bloody freezing." So you do learn. So now I don't quite say it as often as I used to. I am learning, and it is a learning process. Men will never get there. So So whoever is making decisions, speak to these ladies about it, not us. We know nothing.
I mean,
well, I tell you, Alice, last thought on this?
Well, I mean, we've had some great points tonight, but I just think the issue here really is funds, and the NHS is at breaking point. We've already established this, that it simply isn't sustainable at the moment. So the question is to whether taxpayers will have to be burdened even more excessively because of policies like this, when actually there are real problems and there is an enormous...
This is not a real problem. This is not a real problem, then, Alice.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that I think the management needs to be reassessed, and definitely the way funds are
Nina, very briefly, this sort of policy, you know, I guess on paper it's understandable, but it would never happen in the private sector. It's taxpayers that will be bankrolling this one, possibly patients paying for it with their health as treatment slows up.
Well, women are paying for it with their health. And actually, you're not quite correct there, Mark. I mean, John Timpson's, you know, the firm that does the keys and repairs and all of that, I think it was 2 years ago, he announced menopause help for his staff. So there are genuinely really sort of reconstructed men that can actually make this happen.
Okay.
It's not just the NHS. But you know, if you look at and people like Mariella Frostrup and Davina McCall have actually been very honest about this, and they've brought it to the fore, and it can only be a good thing.
OK. Well, look, a very serious matter it is. What is your view, Mark, at gbnews.uk? Coming up later in the show, is Black Friday a con? And also, is it time for footballers to ditch the rainbow flags? We'll speak to a gay male commentator who thinks they should. My Mark Meets guest is Elvis Presley's biographer. But next, in the big question, should it be harder to go on strike? See you in 2.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Is the NHS irrevocably broken? This from Bill, who says, "Hi, Mark. Unless the NHS get rid of most of their middle managers, things will never improve." Norma says, "Mark, I agree with you. The NHS was started as a money pit. It was never really well thought out. Every nation is able to use the NHS for free." Glenys says on the subject of the menopause, because NHS workers suffering menopause symptoms will be given lighter duties and told to work from home. Glenys says, "Mark, women have been going through the menopause for thousands of years without fuss, and they just get on with life. Working from home is sheer indulgence, caused mainly by diva celebrities jumping on the bandwagon. I went through the menopause without HRT. Yes, flushes are not nice, but you get used to it by working through it." That's from Glenys in Swansea. Stephen says, "My granddaughter had pneumonia, blood clots and sepsis. The doctor over the phone sent her to the chemist. A week later, she went to A&E and was transferred to the acute care unit and spent nearly 2 weeks in hospital. You are correct. The NHS is broken, but I fail to hear anybody with a solution." And last but not least on this one for now, Anne says, "The company Timpson's offering menopausal help. No wonder it costs so much to get shoes rehealed and resold. Cheaper to buy new footwear." That's Annie in Norwich. Keep those emails coming. Mark at gbnews.uk. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for the big question, in which we tackle a major news story of the day. Tonight, as Britain faces a winter of discontent, with college lecturers downing tools this week, with nurses striking for the first time in over 100 years in December, and with the RMT promising travel chaos both sides of Christmas with rail disruption, and with civil servants, lawyers, teachers and others threatening industrial action. Given the threat to our economy and the smooth running of the country, should the government change the law to make it more difficult to strike? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome the Conservative MP for Dudley North, Marco Lunghi. Mr. Lunghi, welcome to GB News.
Nice to see you, Mark.
Do you think that there should be a sort of Thatcherite overhaul of union law? Should it be harder to go on strike?
Well, look, I think going on strike is a right that workers should have. But what I would urge is that they pay more attention to their consciences rather than paying attention to their union barons on six-figure salaries. And, you know, if we're talking about nurses in particular, I want to see all nurses paid more. They command a huge amount of goodwill in the nation. But the moment a death or someone comes to serious harm and it is tracked back to the fact that they have gone on strike, they will lose a lot of that goodwill very, very quickly. So I would urge them to get back to the table and discuss what is the right way forward for this. I think most people out there would want to see nurses paid more, but 19% increase in salary is, by anybody's reckoning, a huge increase that I think most people out there know the nation is going to really struggle to afford at a time when we know we need to control inflation, and the more salaries increases, the more inflation goes up. So it becomes a never-ending circle, and it has to be broken somehow, Mark.
We love our nurses, don't we? And we'd like to see a fair settlement for them. I've just argued in my big opinion monologue that there isn't a problem with doctors, nurses, hospital porters, cleaners, the cooks, the security. They're all brilliant reception staff. The NHS itself, I think, needs a complete overhaul. But the issue is that if the nurses go on strike, which it's now been confirmed they will, lives will be diminished and lives will be lost. Is this morally wrong?
Well, this is my point. I think that it is morally wrong for effectively using other people's health as a ransom to try and force the government into a different position. I think most nurses that I know, the ones that I have spoken to, would really wrestle with their consciences over this. And these unions as a whole always talk about the working class, but I think nurses and others looking to go on strike, such as the train drivers yet again and the communication workers union, they have to be thinking about which people they're going to be affecting most. Are the ones that are the better off, that can perhaps pay their way through and find a solution at the problem a strike is causing? Or is it going to be working class people that are going to be suffering more? My submission to you is that it is that. Coming back to the NHS, though, the NHS has a budget which is now verging on £200 billion. When Tony Blair first came to government in 1997, we paid £33 billion. So that's virtually a six-fold increase in the amount of money we spend just on the NHS. £200 billion, just to put it into context, is the whole of the size of the Portuguese economy. And this is on an organisation which is about 1.3 million employees. I believe it's the largest organisation in Europe that employs people. Why is it, I ask you, that nurses and doctors are the ones that we are most short of? Where is all of the money going that we are spending on the NHS? I want to see more nurses, more doctors. We have more, actually, if you look at the statistics. But where is that better performance coming out of the NHS for all the money that we are spending on it? Because we have to think not just of patients here, but also about the taxpayer and what we can afford as a country.
Marco, let's bring in my panellists tonight in the studio. We have political commentator and student Alice Grant. We have legendary journalist Nina Mishkov. And we have comedian Andy Ford. Nina, I do believe it's a fundamental human right to go on strike, to withdraw your labour, a view backed up there by Marco Longhi. But the RMT union's action has been estimated to potentially cost the economy £3 billion at a time when we could really do without that hit.
At a time when it doesn't actually affect the country or commuters. It's no point in calling a strike on Christmas Day, for instance, for the RMT, because nobody would notice. There's no difference. I mean, the thing is, if the government really wanted to sort this out, then Grant Shapps, when he was Transport Minister, would, many months ago, have sat down with Mick Lynch. And it seems to me that the government has actually put a spoke in the wheels of any kind of decent negotiations, because the rail owners, our hands are tied by the government. And this is just ridiculous. Anne-Marie Trevelyan, when on her brief tenure as Transport Minister under Liz Truss, she actually met Mick Lynch, but then, of course, she was out, like Liz Truss was. And so now we have, I think it's Mark Harper. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because we've had a dizzying array of characters changing, you know, over the last couple of months. But he actually has finally met Mick Lynch. So there is a hope that they can be taking it seriously. But the government really wants to vilify unions, and that's why they're dragging their heels. They want to try and equate it to the 1970s, then Margaret Thatcher and the miners' strike. They want to make the unions the sort of the demons. But the unions are just people. They're people like us. They're you and me. They're ordinary people. So this is, you know, the government are in a hiding to nothing. And the reason that so many people are so desperate to make their feelings heard is because the cost of living crisis, the inflation, the screw up with Liz Truss over the budget, which means that mortgages, I mean, people who are desperate for a house or to move house are actually stymied. So it's been 12 years of Tory misrule. And if there was any kind of feeling of we're all in this together, we're all pulling together, it's the Ukraine war, and that's put energy prices up, and but it's really us and them, and the government have brought this on themselves.
OK, well, Alice Grant, I would say that many of these public sector workers and private sector workers do deserve a pay rise. The problem is that we shut down the economy for 2.5 years. We borrowed £500 billion. the country's broke, it's not going to be possible.
I agree entirely, and many of these workers also, they're not just fighting for pay rise, but also for the fact that it is so extremely difficult to now afford to live in this society and to afford food. And 3 years ago, nurses would be able to live, fine with their wage, but now it's increasingly difficult. And of course, they're demanding a pay rise when we have a cost of living crisis and energy crisis, and this is caused ultimately by the government and their mismanagement. So I agree in what's been said. I think it's very clear that the government has a large hand in this, especially with the COVID lockdown, which destroyed so many businesses and impoverished us further. And now with more push towards a net zero agenda, which is going to further impoverish us. And ultimately, I think things need to change coming from the top, because it is us, the ordinary people, who are suffering. And indeed, these are people who we care dearly about, our nurses, people who work in the rail strikes. I sympathise with them a lot. Of course, I understand the frustration that many people are facing, the patients' backlogs and also people who just want to travel. But ultimately, it does feel as though I can sympathise far more with the workers than with the government, who has driven our economy into ruin over so many years.
Andy Ford, I've only got a few seconds. Closing thoughts on this?
Well, it's very difficult to legislate when people are passionate about what they believe. I mean, that sounds a bit totalitarian to me. People are struggling financially at the moment, and who wouldn't want a little bit more? And it's very difficult. I can't remember a time when there haven't been strikes, and they normally are sorted out at some point. It's just that at the moment, everyone's struggling. And if people are really passionate, particularly the nurses, legislating to stop them from being passionate doesn't really work, does it? Not for me, anyway.
Marco Longhi, thank you so much for giving up a chunk of your Friday evening. It's been an illuminating conversation. Do join us again in the near future. Marco Longhi is the Conservative MP for Dudley North. Thanks to my brilliant panel as well. What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. Coming up in the next hour, my Mark Meets guest is the Elvis biographer, Sally A. Hurdle. She tells his incredible story. Plus, we got the papers at 10:30 with a sneak peek at 10:20 with full panel reaction. But later this hour, is it time for footballers to get rid of the rainbow flags? That's the view of a gay commentator who'll be joining me before 10. But next, is Black Friday a con? See you shortly.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio, and online.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg. And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Strong opinions on the NHS. Nigel says, Mark, the NHS should be replaced with a social insurance scheme, just like the ones that operate in every other first world country. The Netherlands, France, Japan, they perform so much better on healthcare than we do. We need to grow up on this subject, says Nigel. D. Edwards says, Mark, maybe if the NHS hadn't sacked so many of its staff who refused an experimental vaccine, they would be in a position to deal with things better. Blame the vaccine zealous who are happy to turn the NHS into a COVID-only service. Strong opinions, keep them coming. Mark at gbnews.uk. Now, the cost of living crisis appears to have been put on hold this weekend as shoppers flock to both physical shops in the high street and online in pursuit of Black Friday purchases. But is this US import a genuine opportunity to save money and grab a bargain, or is it an almighty con? To get the definitive answer, I'm delighted to welcome the Director of Strategy at IMRG, Andy Mulcahy. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Any Black Friday purchases yourself?
I have made a few, but they're presents for other people, so I can't really give you the detail of them.
Oh, no, top secret. Of course, it's a great stocking filler, isn't it? It's a great opportunity to do the Christmas shopping early so you're not under pressure on the 24th.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's a very strange thing. It's an American institution, effectively. It's linked to Thanksgiving in the US. We don't have Thanksgiving here, but we've incorporated it via Amazon. And it's a big sales campaign when you don't really want to be doing one as a retailer, because demand is high. So you want people to be spending full price because they need to buy things for Christmas. Normally, you would discount things when you have end of a season and you need to clear some stock out of the warehouse that you didn't sell. This is not like that. This is just, we've got to do it because kind of the market's telling us that we've got to do it. So it's a very difficult thing, but we're stuck with it. Can't do anything about it.
Isn't there a bit of jiggery-pokery going on when it comes to Black Friday, though? For example, my team did a bit of research and they found a report from Which last year. And there was a Toshiba TV for sale on Very.com for £279, OK? Now, Very said that this was a discount of £100 with the TV previously on sale for £379. But it had been listed at £379 for 3 days before Black Friday. I smell a rat.
Well, the thing with what they do with their prices is it's all linked to demand. So if what they'll do is that you don't want to be selling things at a discount. You want to be selling things at full price. If you haven't sold things, it's because the demand isn't there, and therefore you need to discount it. So what the Which report found is that there are times throughout the year where these things have been cheaper than they are on Black Friday. That's not necessarily sort of nefarious behaviour on the part of the retailer. It just means that, maybe 2 months ago when there was a mid-season sale, they wanted to clear some stock because they bought it in, didn't sell it, there wasn't the demand for it. So they might have slashed it quite heavily in order to actually get rid of the thing. That didn't work. So then it comes to Black Friday and you think, well, we'll try and clear it again here. But you don't necessarily need to reduce it quite as much because the demand is a bit higher. So there's not quite as much pressure to do that. So yes, it might have been cheaper at another time, but it's just the way that things are. It's not necessarily bad behavior. And, you think, sort of instinctively when you see something, you think, is this worth, £400 or whatever that thing was? And if it's reduced to 350, does that represent a good deal? And I think electronics is a bit difficult. It is difficult when something's £500. I mean, if a TV's £500, I've got no idea whether a TV's worth £500 or not. But if you look at something like a pair of trainers, if it says, it was £50 and now it's £35, you can look at it and think, well, probably that is worth £50 normally. So £35 actually feels like a reasonably good deal. So I think when people use their sort of common sense and intuition, you can sniff out the bad things and work out what is actually pretty good.
Well, perhaps so. I mean, we found a fridge as well that was on sale for £869. My God, that's a posh fridge. But it dropped in price by £20 less than a week later and stayed the lower price every day until February. Forget about Black Friday. Here's my point. I'm a bit of a traditionalist, and I just think, Andy, that we don't need Black Friday. It's an American invention. We've got the January sales. We've got the summer sales. We've got shops like TK Maxx, where it's a sale all year long. Why bother with this weekend?
So there's a lot of retailers. I mean, if we could wave a magic wand and say, why don't we just sort of get rid of Black Friday? I think a lot of retailers would probably say, yeah, let's wave that wand. But the problem is we're stuck with it now, because in the lead up to Christmas, there's now this idea that you should just be able to get loads of stuff at a discount. Everybody's got to run a discount. And you can, of course, take a principled stand against it, which some retailers do. But ultimately, your competitors will do it. There will always be someone who does it. So you get dragged into it. There's just no way they can get out of it. And the ones who take that principled stand, you'll notice that if you go to their website, they're not necessarily got a Black Friday sale on, but they have got a 50% off sale. It's just not called Black Friday.
Yeah, let's bring my panel in if we can, because they're big shoppers. Andy Ford makes an awful lot of money as a panto star. I think it's about £10,000 a day or something. We've also got Alice Grant, who's a struggling student who loves a bargain, and Nina Mishkov, who's had more Fleet Street payouts than you've had hot dinners, so the drinks are on her. Listen, let's start with you, Andy. Do you like a Black Friday purchase? A lot of people are addicted to it, aren't they?
Yeah, not for me, lover. Don't appeal to me at all. If you want to buy something, and that is on a special deal, if it's something that you wanted to buy for a while, yeah, great, go for it. But don't be tempted in. And particularly, it's 50 quid off, plus we got a special deal. Get it now. Nothing to pay until so-and-so. And by the time you've done all the HP, you've ended up paying more for it. Nah, don't. I'm a bit... I sound a bit miserable, don't I? But it's just a pre-Christmas sale. And thank you, America, for all that. When I was young, look at me, on Valentine's Day, you bought a Valentine's Day card for your sweetheart. And thank you, America. Now, Valentine's Day, it costs you a flipping arm and a leg because you've got to send them to everyone. It's just marketing gone crazy. If you need it, buy it. If you don't need it, don't buy it.
That's exactly right. I've just received a call from your Mrs. Andy Ford. She's expecting a big night on the 14th of February, so strap yourself in. Not literally, of course. That. Family show. Alice Grant, Black Friday, a vulgar Americanism and a con.
Well, I'm not the biggest fan of, unbridled consumerism, but I do think that at this point it is quite a good idea to stimulate our economy. And I think if it's small British businesses who are also going to take part in this, then why not support them and buy something? But of course, shoppers should be aware of the occasional cons, which, as your team have looked into, that there are quite a few bargains which aren't actually that much of a bargain. So. But otherwise, why not? I think it's a good idea to support British businesses in any way we can. So if the Black Friday sales can help stimulate our economy, then why not?
Nina Mishkov, I do love the traditional January sales. It's a perfect antidote to that hangover after Christmas, isn't it? And the summer sales as well. You can pick up some bargains. But I don't remember Black Friday when I was growing up. It feels to me like an unwelcome cultural imposition.
Well, it's true. I mean, there used to be only, as you said, the January sales and the summer sales. But then, of course, shops have been discounting things, every kind of random reason, because trade is so bad. But I agree with you that Black Friday, it is just an American thing. I mean, I've been in America during Thanksgiving, and so you have your Thanksgiving, it's the third Thursday in November, so the big holiday, and then people are off for the weekend. And Americans don't get as many holidays as we do by any means. So the fact that they're off until the following Monday is a big deal for them. So then the Friday, these sales were instituted so that all the families are together and we'll go rushing to the shops and spend all our money. And that's where it's come from. And it's nothing to do with us. It is tied to Thanksgiving, because everything leads up to Thanksgiving. It's a massive deal, and all the advertising on telly's about it. And the minute Friday morning dawns, it's Black Friday, and then after that, it's downhill to Christmas.
Downhill to Christmas, couldn't put it better. The IMRG do a brilliant job. They represent online retailers in the UK, and their Director of Strategy is Andy Mulcahy. Andy, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations to your family for all of those early Christmas presents. What I find very odd about Black Friday is always electric toothbrushes, isn't it? And to be honest with you, I've got a few cavities, so maybe I could do with that. Don't forget, it's not Black Friday, is it? It's the whole bloody weekend. Lots more to come. After this, should footballers ditch the rainbow flag? We'll speak to a gay man who thinks they should. Plus, after 10, I'll be dealing with Nicola Sturgeon. See you shortly.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Is Black Friday a con? Alex says online retailers should be forced to display the past 6 months of an item's pricing. Also, Johnny says, I find the only time it's worth Black Friday is when you need something and you can't wait until beyond November. For example, my phone contract expired recently. I decided to hold off on getting a new one until Black Friday came around. I'm looking at £8 a month saving, which adds up over 2 years. That does sound like a bargain, Johnny. And finally, on the NHS at this stage, Prasanna has emailed the programme. Having worked in the NHS for 46 years, I can tell you that the money is not being used to recruit frontline staff. It's used by senior managers to create unwanted jobs with fancy titles for their mates to retire on good lump sums. This is what frustrates the staff and causes resentment. Jobs for mates. Prasanna, thank you for that. Keep those emails coming, mark@gbnews.uk. As a continued debate rages around whether football stars should wear the Pride rainbow flag to support LGBTQ+ people during the World Cup, England captain Harry Kane seems to have forgotten that Brits at home are struggling financially and definitely doesn't read the room whilst wearing a £500,000 Rolex rainbow watch, over £500,000 worth. He may have just borrowed the watch, but I'm not sure about the optics at this moment in time. Well, one particular commentator went viral on Twitter on the issue of footballers and rainbow flags. Take a listen.
Well, thank you ever so much for all of the kind of loves and all of that sort of stuff. I am a gay man. I don't want to keep talking about a bloody rainbow flag. Thank you for the support on that one from also members of my own brethren, so to speak. I want to also watch England tonight. Are they playing? I believe they are, right? Without waving a flag, without talking about a flag, without doing some sort of ritual like putting the hand over the mouth and all of that. I just want to get a bottle of wine. I was going to say a few beers, but that would be far not me, far away from who I am. I want to enjoy it, and I do not want to talk about bloody armbands and flags and rituals that people take to support my kind of group, if that makes sense.
Well, as he mentioned in the video, Steve Miller is a gay man and he is a weight loss guru. He's the founder of the very successful Fatnosis weight loss program, and he joins us now. First of all, congratulations on the video, Steve. It sparked a debate. First of all, did you have that bottle of wine and did you watch the game?
Well, I had half a bottle of wine because I knew I was talking to you, so I can't be leathered. But I think my point is accurate tonight because I don't know if you were able to see any of the match, but England played pretty poorly. And it's probably because they were running around in their shorts, thinking about armbands, thinking about watches. What watch shall I wear next time? And what flag am I going to wear next time? And frankly, on a more serious note, I'm fed up to the back teeth of it, to be quite honest with you. And and the reason for that is many. But why are we? This is the World Cup. Let's be talking about the technical issues of football. Let's be talking about cheering the lads on rather than be talking about, you know, LGBTQ. I hope I've got all the letters in there. +1. I think I've missed that bit out. And let's let the lads play the game. Big point here, though, as well, is it was around, I think I've got my dates right, about 10 years ago, we had quite a lot of different gay rights, quite rightly, you know, implemented gay marriage and civil partnerships, the Equality Act and all that sort of stuff, right? It may even be over 10 years. We weren't wearing armbands, we weren't waving a flag, and we weren't putting our hand over our mouth. So I do not agree with all this focus on armbands and talking politics in football all the time. And actually, you know, I don't agree with the laws over there, but frankly, it ain't none of our business. And if you don't agree with the law over there, you don't go and play the match. Make your mind up and stop flashing your Rolex watch or whatever it is, virtue signalling to people like me, who I find it very patronising, and to other people who are really struggling right now. And I also think this over-the-top promotion of flags, armbands, rituals, the public are starting to resent it. And I tell you, if you keep poking, something's going to explode, and that's going to be the public. They've had enough of it. And frankly, I'm not surprised.
Stephen Miller, you have earned the other half of that bottle of wine. Congratulations on your fantastic viral video. Very briefly, what's your Twitter handle so people can go back and watch it in all its glory?
Of course, Stephen J. Miller.
There you go. Check it out. And, of course, Stephen Miller is the founder of Fatnosis, a successful weight loss program. And he lost a bit of weight doing that video, let me tell you. Great debate and a great video. Thanks, Stephen. See you soon. Lots more to come. I will see you shortly. I'll be dealing in the next hour with Nicola Sturgeon. Don't go anywhere.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A fascinating conversation about Black Friday. Is it a con? The emails are flooding in thick and fast. Mark at gbnews.uk. Mark, small businesses cannot afford to have sales before Christmas as margins are so tight. This is crucial trading time for small high street businesses and will also determine whether they will still be trading next year. Black Friday is yet another disastrous import from America, which only helps big online companies who pay little tax. Strong words there from Andrew. Keep those emails coming, mark at gbnews.uk. It is 10 o'clock, and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. My Mark Meets guest is Elvis Presley's biographer, who tells his incredible story shortly. And what a story, all about the king, his life, his childhood, his fame, his riches, and his untimely death. In the news agenda with my panel, does society demonise people on benefits? And after a man is fired for not socialising after work, do you have to be friends with your colleagues? Are you pals with your workmates? Mark at gbnews.uk. Plus, we've got tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 with a sneak preview at 10:20. That is 10 minutes before everyone else. But after this, my take at 10. Nicola Sturgeon's independence dream is in tatters. Brexit is off the table for now. Find out more shortly. I'm not pulling my punches. But first, the headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Mark, thank you. I am Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. An independent review into the London Fire Brigade has called it institutionally misogynist and racist. It reveals accounts from a black firefighter who had a noose placed by his locker, women being groped and people having their helmets filled with urine. The review was commissioned after firefighter Jaden Francois Esperit took his own life in 2020. London Fire Brigade bosses have said the behaviour isn't acceptable and welcomed all 23 recommendations. The Prime Minister has said he has enormous respect for nurses, but their pay demands of 19% are simply unaffordable. Staff in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will walk out for 2 days on the 15th and 20th of December in their first national strike in over a century. The Royal College of Nursing has accused the government of rejecting formal talks as an alternative to industrial action. But Rishi Sunak says he's hopeful they can find a resolution.
I know things are difficult right now for everyone because of what's happening with inflation, and that's why our plans that we outlined last week will get a grip of inflation and bring it down. That's really important. And in the meantime, what the unions are asking for, I think, is a 19% pay rise. And I think most people watching will recognise that that's obviously unaffordable. And that's why I'm pleased that the Health Secretary is sitting down, talking to the union, and hopefully we can find a way through this.
Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the government is shirking its responsibilities.
Nurses have been driven to this by the government, and that's a badge of shame for the government. They've never taken strike action before. And for patients, this is going to be devastating news. Nurses don't want to go on strike.
And to the World Cup, England have missed out on a chance to secure a place in the final 16 after a 0-0 draw against the USA in Qatar. In the Al Bayt Stadium, the team were booed by disappointed fans as the final whistle went. And supporters watching on from a fan zone in South London were furious by the result, throwing cups and spraying drinks. England can still make it to the knockout stages, but this match has piled on the pressure heading into Tuesday's eagerly anticipated clash with Wales. Fans say England didn't perform well.
A little bit devastated, I can't lie. After the Iran game, it's kind of 6-2 straight in. You're thinking, we'll fly through the next game. And we go in, there's just nothing there.
I think we were just a bit slow, a little bit. Just didn't press the ball, didn't go for it. I think we just played it safe.
At the end of the day, I think we should still get through the group. Puts a lot of pressure on the Wales game on Tuesday night, but yeah, overall it wasn't good enough tonight, but I still fancy us to get through.
You're up to date on TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Mark.
Many thanks to Bethany Elsey, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Big stories, big guests and always big opinions. In the news agenda with my panel, does society demonise people on benefits? And after a man is fired for not socialising after work, do you have to be friends with your colleagues? Plus tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 sharp with a sneak preview at 10:20. That's 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. And my Mark Meets guest is Elvis Presley's biographer. She tells his incredible story shortly. But first, it's time for my Take at 10. The dream is over. The UK Supreme Court has unanimously ruled that the Scottish Government cannot hold an independence referendum without Westminster's permission, dealing a blow to First Minister Nicola Sturgeon's efforts to take Scotland out of the Union. This is good news because the case for Scottish independence raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. Firstly, what currency would Emperor Sturgeon use? The SNP glibly assume it would be the pound. Well, the Treasury will have something to say about that. Who will defend Scotland in the unimaginable scenario of a foreign attack, particularly given that Nicola wants to nuke the nukes. Sturgeon is committed to getting rid of Trident, exposing Scotland at a time when monsters like Putin are rampaging across Eastern Europe and when China circles a sharpened pencil around the map of Taiwan. The golden promise of Scottish independence is EU membership, but would Spain accept this and risk losing Catalonia? And how would the EU protect their beloved single market with an open border between England and Scotland? Good luck with that. That the SNP wants sovereignty only to hand it over to Brussels shows how irrational and incoherent this plan is. No control of their currency, as they would have to take the euro. No control of their borders with Schengen. No control of their courts, plus huge monthly payments for the privilege of membership. It all doesn't add up. Talk about jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. And the last time I checked, the EU isn't great with small countries. Exhibit A, Greece, who were skewered like a kebab by Angela Merkel and friends. What happens to democracy north of the border if Scotland leave the Union? With Labour support at an all-time low, and with the brief Tory renaissance strangled at birth, you're looking at single-party rule under Emperor Sturgeon, possibly for decades. It's my view that an independent Scotland would be poorer, more divided, and of course, more woke. Don't forget about Emperor Sturgeon's various policies. For example, children as young as 5 being able to change their name or pronoun without parental permission. Civil servants in Scotland have been ordered to write he, him, or she, her on their emails. And so-called hate crime laws are now so draconian that you could potentially get arrested for making an off-colour remark in your own home. Under the politically correct ideology of the SNP, the Holy Church of Woke, the likes of national hero Billy Connolly would be strung up for his wonderfully naughty comedy. And don't be fooled by the electoral success of the SNP. They are sitting pretty on the electoral map due to the hopeless collapse of Labour and the Tories. But it doesn't mean that they're loved and respected. There's just no alternative. And a vote for the SNP is not necessarily a vote for independence. Scotland would be more divided if she left. And the reason why is because this country, a beautiful country though she is, was horribly split over Indie Ref 1, and a Scottish departure from the UK would cement that divide. It's been reported, and many of you have written to me on this show to confirm, that those who voted for Scotland to stay in the UK keep their views quiet for fear of reprisals, attacks on social media, trouble at work or socially. And one particular viewer told me in an email that if you openly campaigned for Scotland to stay, you might get a brick through your window. That's how sectarian this has become. In the end, Scottish independence just makes no sense. The United Kingdom is the greatest political union in history. Great Britain is a beacon of diversity. It's the 5th biggest economy in the world and is a political, diplomatic, military and creative powerhouse. I'm not saying Scotland would not survive outside. Of course it would. Scotland will always prevail. Scotland is an incredible country. Its people are the best. But Scotland would be weaker and poorer, as would England, Northern Ireland and Wales. You see, we need each other. That's always been the beauty of the relationship, a reciprocal partnership that has provided economic and political stability for over 300 years. Don't fix it if it ain't broke. The temptation, of course, is to call Nicola Sturgeon's bluff and grant her the referendum. Let her really sell what I'm calling Muck-Brexit. Given it's such a terrible idea, I just can't see how a majority of Scots would vote for it. The advantage of calling her bluff is that it would lance the boil of independence and kill this idea forever, and with that, likely Emperor Sturgeon's political career. Because independence is the only thing that she's got to offer. Outside of that, her only achievements are disastrous health outcomes, failing education policies, and appalling levels of drug addiction. Independence is Sturgeon's political fig leaf, behind which you will find nothing. In the absence of independence, it will be immediately clear Sturgeon is the emperor with no clothes. The naked truth is that an independent Scotland would be a disaster for Scotland and a tragedy for the UK. And Nicola knows it. I do hope this bagpipes down. She's no flower of Scotland. What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. I'd particularly like to hear from you if you are north of the border, and especially if you are a supporter of independence. Please change my mind, because my mind is open, and Mark Dolan tonight is always a broad church of opinion. Hence my fantastic panel tonight, reacting to my take at 10 and all of the big stories of the day. Political commentator and student Alice Grant, legendary journalist Nina Mishkov, and the brilliant comedian and panto star Andy Ford. Alice, what do you think about independence? Is the dream finally over, given this Supreme Court ruling?
Well, I do hope so. As someone who has Scottish heritage, I feel very strongly about this. Of course, I think that a true Scottish patriot, unlike EU fanatic Nicola Sturgeon, would know that this would indeed be disastrous for Scotland. We're talking about a 300-year-old union, which is so much more integrated than any kind of modern political union like the EU, for example, and this is something that's so incredibly special for our nations, and to basically try to distract the Scottish people with it, because as you said, Mark, it's her fig leaf. Behind this independence, what is there except for someone who is tyrannical, authoritarian, and quite frankly does not have the interests of the Scottish people at heart. So I'm definitely against, the Scotland breaking away from this union, as someone who deeply cares about Scotland and who loves that country. So,
Andy Ford, have you performed up in Scotland? What's your view about this Scottish flirtation with independence?
I've done a couple of gigs in Scotland. One was fantastic. The other one, I don't want to talk about it, and I wish you didn't bring it up. Thank you very much.
I've had a few of those.
To quote the words of Joni Mitchell, you don't know what you got till it's gone. And I just feel, I've grown up. I love our country, I love the UK, but I don't live in Scotland, and there are people with different views, and if that's what they want, and enough of them want it, there ain't a lot we can do. Even the Supreme Court thing, it'll go on and on and on and on. I hope it doesn't happen, because I like the idea of us being, we're not, it's great to beat Scotland at football, of course. But we do. I love driving into Scotland. I love driving into Wales. And I love the power of our united nation. So, yeah, I'd be disappointed if it happened. But it's, ain't down to me.
However, Nina Mishkov, as I've pointed out in my take at 10, Nicola Sturgeon enjoys unprecedented political support. There are enough Scots out there that back the SNP that would suggest Scotland deserve this referendum. Perhaps it should be granted just on democratic grounds.
Absolutely on democratic grounds. And if you're talking about democracy, Scotland in the Brexit debate, that 62% voted Remain. That's nearly 2/3 of the country. And they have found themselves to be ruled over by an increasingly disastrous Tory government. 12 years, that would be enough to put anybody off. And, why cannot Scots decide themselves? I was born in Scotland. My mum was Scottish. So I feel that, I have some kind of say in it. But it's not up to us to say what Scotland should do. The people of Scotland should decide. Europe did not decide when the UK wanted to leave. There wasn't a vote in Europe, there wasn't a law in Europe that actually prevented the UK having its own vote and leaving. So why couldn't Scotland make their own decision too?
Well, however, Nina Mishkov, shouldn't we have a vote on this across the UK, in Northern Ireland, in England and in Wales, because it affects us too?
No, because it is actually nothing to do with the rest of the UK. Of course, the ramifications will that, but it's the will of the Scottish people. If that's what they want, then that they should get it. And the thing is, Nicola Sturgeon will make the next election a vote on this issue. She will make it very, very clear that if you vote for the SNP, it is a vote to leave.
But that's just undermining the vote that took place in 2014. Surely the Scottish people should have been heard then when they decided to remain within this union.
Well, something
truly democratic would be to actually listen to the voice of the people when they said, no, we want to remain in the United Kingdom.
Well, they
I mean, how many
did.
referendums must we have?
Oh, for heaven's sake! I mean, times change. I mean,
we waited 47 years for a referendum on the EU. Are we really going to have this constant referenda?
It's 8 years later, and people have changed their minds. People have changed their minds. An awful lot of people have changed their minds, and they should have the right to decide. It's not up to us. It's up to the Scottish nation. And I don't agree with you, Mark, that she doesn't have the best interest of Scotland at heart. She is Scottish through and through. And believe me, Billy Connolly is still a hero there and would not be cancelled in any way. And not by Nicola Sturgeon, I can tell you that.
Well, I think in terms of economically, from an economic point of view, it is so clear that Scotland leaving the United Kingdom and being independent would really be damaging for the Scottish economy.
Well, it's not up to us,
I want to make the economic argument. Professor Mark Blythe, who sits on the Scottish Governmental Economic Advisory Council, has admitted himself that it would be disastrous for Scotland. And this is not even mentioning the fact that they could potentially then become part of the European Union, which would mean even further economic damage to Scotland. So
why would that?
I think if you truly have the best interests of Scotland at heart, you would not want to see our neighbours suffering under even more economic pressure and further impoverishment of the Scottish people.
The UK as a whole, minus Scotland, well, in fact, Northern Ireland voted against leaving, and Wales only voted to leave because there were so many English people living there that swayed the vote. That's been proven. So they got their say. Why should Scotland not get their say to have their sovereignty? If they want their sovereignty and it's economically disastrous, as indeed Brexit has been so far for us, then let them have it.
OK,
if that's what they want.
Andy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when the campaign starts, everyone will give views, and if people are influenced by people that don't want the Scots to leave our union, then that argument will win the day. That's what democracy is, isn't it? You put your point of view, and then a vote is taken. So, you know, it is up to the Scottish people. I hope they don't go, because I love them, but not our job.
Well, there you go. In terms of my panel, it's a vote of 2 out of 3 for the Scots to be granted an independence referendum. What's your view, Mark, at gbnews.uk? Claire has emailed in to say, Mark, I support Nicola Sturgeon, and it is the democratic right of the Scottish people to choose their future. We'll get to more of your emails very shortly. Coming up, we're going to speak to Elvis Presley's biographer on his incredible life and amazing career. We've got the papers at 10:30 with a sneak preview after this break.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. And as always, at this time of the show, every Friday, Saturday and Sunday, we'll take a sneak peek at the papers 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. So let's have a look at the Daily Mail. Now, Battle of Britain. England's World Cup flop sets up crunch clash against Wales. England are facing a historic Battle of Britain match against Wales on Tuesday after last night's, of course that was tonight's, dismal draw against the USA. Also, The Queen, an intimate biography by royal confidant Giles Brandreth. A major serialisation starts in the Daily Mail. Am I the only one that misses her terribly? I'm sure I'm not. The Daily Mirror. World Cup weary. Yawn in the USA. Wags verdict as dull England draw sets up do or die clash with Wales. More of your papers at exactly 10:30, but it's time now for this. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport, business and beyond. Tonight, the celebrated Elvis Presley biographer, Sally A. Hurdle. Now, the best-selling author of Elvis, Destined to Die Young, is now out with her latest book, and it's winning rave reviews. It is called... what's it called? Let's have a look. Destined to Fly, the story of the pilot Ron Strauss from Iowa to Elvis. That's right. It's all about Elvis's pilot, Ron Strauss, famous for flying the Lisa Marie airplane. And this pilot got to know him intimately. I'm delighted to say that the best-selling author of both books, Sally A. Hurdle, is with us now. Hi, Sally.
Hey, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. I want to get to the detail of Elvis's amazing life, but what inspired this new book about the guy that flew him around the world?
Yeah, well, Ron Strauss was the first person I met who knew Elvis when I was researching Destined to Die Young. And he kind of became that anchor for me because after meeting Ron, and I met him here in Northern Michigan where I live, because he would vacation here in the summertime. And the chances of meeting someone who knew Elvis in Northern Michigan are slim to none. So it was kind of an exciting thing. And he just quickly became an anchor for me in the Elvis world because what followed, were half a dozen research trips to Tupelo and Memphis and meeting so many people who knew Elvis and incredible people. But what I didn't know is that, there'd be a lot of exaggeration attached to Elvis. And as a journalist, you kind of have to weed through that. And meeting Ron first, who was such a man of integrity, I've heard him tell a story a dozen times and it never changes, it never grows. So he just quickly became a good friend. And he has an incredible story, including the 2 years he flew Elvis and certainly before and after. So just an honor to tell his story.
When he flew Elvis, was it during Elvis's golden period?
Well, Elvis acquired the Lisa Marie, which is his famous airplane that sits on Elvis Presley Boulevard today, in 1975. So he flew him from 75 until his untimely death in 1977. So tons of touring going on those years. An exciting time in Elvis's career, no doubt, because he's touring more than he ever did, but certainly towards the tail end.
And what did Ron Strauss, this iconic pilot tell you about Elvis that you didn't know?
Well, you know, what this book gives us is just a really lovely insight into Elvis as a boss. Because we know that Elvis always he's known for having all these guys around him all the time with the Memphis Mafia, right? We know he has the Colonel. And I think Elvis kind of gets buried in that a little bit. Like he just shows up and sings and everybody else does everything. But the truth is that Elvis was very much the boss of that organization. And of course, no one could be Elvis for Elvis. So we see this really lovely, you know, professional relationship between him and the pilots. There's a little bit of professional distance that's kept there that isn't, you know, present in some of the other relationships that become a little too enmeshed and that professional line is crossed. But this is one of the few times that Elvis has to hire a crew of professionals. No one else can fly that airplane. And of course, Elvis is famous for hiring cousins and family and friends, you know, and working them into positions, but he couldn't do that for the airplane. So we really get to see him as a boss, and it's an interesting look.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Elvis, you are one of the world's most celebrated Elvis biographers. Was he a happy man?
I think so. You know, I think Elvis had the natural ups and downs of anyone, and maybe some of those ups and downs were higher or lower than most people because he lived a life, you know, unlike anyone else, and a level of fame that no one else had achieved, you know, at that time. But he said more than once that he loved being Elvis Presley, and I think we have to believe him when he says that. But of course, he had struggles, and you know what we know from my first book and the research in that is that he had a tremendous amount of health struggles that weren't known and many weren't understood at the time. So he definitely had highs and lows, but I think overall he loved being Elvis Presley.
Well, yes, my viewers should take note of your fantastic first bestseller, Elvis, Destined to Die Young. What were some of those health ailments that he disguised? Because if you look at him in his pomp, he was such an Adonis, wasn't he? And he glowed with good health, but the opposite was actually the case.
Yeah, and you know, that appearance, I think, is one of the reasons this information has been buried for so long, because he does look so perfect in 1957. It's hard to imagine there's anything wrong with Elvis Presley. But the truth is that he was just as ill in 57 as he was in 77. They're not visibly apparent yet, because by the time he passes in 1977, he has disease or disorder in 9 of the 11 systems of the body. At least 5 of those are proven to be present prior to fame, so they couldn't be the end result with a prescription medication problem, which does become a problem. But they're most likely genetic in nature. You know, that first book does go through his family tree. We see a lot of young death in that family. We see a lot of heart, liver, lung-related issues, and they're all explained in that book.
What were the circumstances around his death, Sally? Are those stories of him being in the bathroom, having just eaten another burger, apocryphal, or is there some truth to that?
I think that Elvis is the biggest victim of sensationalism in our worldwide culture. The idea of him being a glutton, I think, is a false one. There were times that he indulged without question, but I think because he's the king of rock and roll, that idea of indulgence kind of comes along with it, or gluttony. But the truth, yes, he did. He passed in the bathroom. And one of the reasons for writing that book and really answering that question of why does he turn to the prescription medication and then why does he continue returning to it, is to kind of, you know, to make sure that there's a bigger conversation around Elvis than just he took too many pills and died in the bathroom. He certainly deserves more than that. He's a historical figure, not just a rock and roll star. So the book does explain, you know, leading up to that, you know, the medication he takes, why he takes it. A lot of the things that he's taking really do have medical reasons, even then. And of course, there's a number of things like an autoimmune issue that he suffers from that wouldn't have been understood in 1977. So it's kind of a combination of those things.
You know, I think he's the greatest singer in the history of music. He wasn't he, the biggest star the world had ever seen. He invented the idea of a global celebrity, paving the way for Michael Jackson, the Beatles, you name it. What is his legacy, do you think? Does his popularity endure, and what has he left with the world?
I absolutely think it endures. He's been gone now for 45 years and he's still known the world over by his first name and his image alone. You know, that is remarkable. I think that his legacy is simply that he culturally shifted the universe in a way no one before him or after ever has. And it's certainly still there. You know, I always say you shouldn't listen to music if you don't know the foundation of Frank and Sinatra and Elvis Presley. Everything that came after is rooted in those guys in a big way. And certainly Elvis Presley. I mean, he changed fashion and music. And of course, there's the movie years. I mean, it's all iconic, right?
Absolutely. Well, look, I really enjoyed the first book, which lovely Tom's going to give us a still of now. That's your original bestseller, Elvis, Destined to Die Young. Well, her latest is out now, and I can't wait to read it. It's winning rave reviews. It's called Destined to Fly, the story of the pilot Ron Strauss from Iowa to Elvis. Congratulations on its release and all those great reviews. And Sally, we'll catch you next time your next book comes out.
Sounds great. It's great to see you again, Mark.
Great stuff, Sally. A hurdle there. Lots more to come. Next up, The Papers, live and uninterrupted. See you in 2.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio, and online.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg. And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Lots more to come in the news agenda with my panel. Following the news that a man has been sacked for not being sociable with his work colleagues, are you supposed to be pals with your co-employees? And also, do we demonise benefit claimants? We'll discuss all of that shortly, but it's just gone 10:30. It's time now for tomorrow's papers, and let us start with... where should we start? Let's start with this. OK, let's have the Times newspaper. And they lead with, stop tweeting and get on with the job, police told. The police must stop virtue signalling on social media and get on with the job they're paid to do, one of England's most senior officers has said. Stephen Watson, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, said he wanted officers to avoid online fluff and nonsense and get on with catching criminals and answering 999 calls. Also, Lions tamed. Harry Kane led his England side to a 0-0 draw against the USA in Qatar. failing to nail down a place in the final 16. Next up, where shall we go? Let's go to the Telegraph now. Not enough is being done to help the next generation. This from the Princess of Wales, who vows to build on her work improving the lives of under 5-year-olds and shine a light on early years education. Pension age move to 68 could disrupt retirement plans, and NHS could hire 13,000 nurses for a 1% pay rise. The Guardian next. Care charities forced to evict disabled residents. Severely disabled care home residents are being evicted because of disputes between one of the UK's best-known care charities and a number of local authorities that the charity is accused of refusing to meet the soaring costs of care. Also, stalemate. 3 Lions struggle in goalless draw against the USA. Daily Express, well, that was a relaxing Friday night, wasn't it? Nervy 3 Lions edge closer to the last 16. And parents raid pensions to bail out loved ones. Parents are raiding retirement funds early to help their children through the cost of living crisis. Figures show 500,000 people withdrew a total of £3.5 billion from pension pots in just 3 months this year. The Sun now. Yawn in the USA. But at least we're on the brink of going through. England were held to a boring 0-0 draw by the USA in the World Cup, but the 3 Lions will make the knockout stages as long as they are not hammered by Wales and the group's other result goes against them. There you go. We're already looking for other teams to help us out.
Oh, God,
Desperate. We'll come to that shortly. Also revealed final days of the Queen. She watched Line of Duty. She had bone marrow cancer, the Sun understand, and she supported Prince Andrew through his troubles. The Eye weekend next. Tories fear mass exodus of MPs before the next election. Rishi Sunak has been warned Red Wall MPs will quit amid economic turmoil after levelling up minister and young rising star Dehenna Davidson, star of GBNews, of course, becomes the 3rd Tory MP to say she will not stand at the next general election. Also, Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab faces more bullying complaints as the floodgates open. The Daily Star. Wags fight to stay awake as England are held to a draw. Yawn in the USA is the headline they go for as well. I've got to say, they've been quite unoriginal, Fleet Street, tonight, all going for the same pun. What a bored draw. England were held to a 0-0 stalemate in their soccer ball showdown with Team USA. Next up, it's Battle of Britain with Wales on Tuesday. We'll all be glued to that one. We can go back to the Mail, which we looked at 10. Now for the Battle of Britain. England's World Cup flop sets up crunch clash against Wales. And The Queen, an intimate biography by royal confidant Giles Brandreth. A major new serialisation starts in the Mail tomorrow. And last but not least, once again, 3rd time lucky, the Daily Mirror. World Cup weary, yawn in the USA. Wags verdict as dull England draw sets up do-or-die clash with Wales. And those are your front pages. And reacting to all of those stories, political commentator and student Alice Grant, legendary journalist Nina Mishkov, and brilliant comedian and panto star Andy Ford. And folks, let's have a look at this story in The Times. Stop tweeting and get on with the job, police told. Nina, this will be good news for many who are worried about crime.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is that the police should be solving crime. They should be walking our streets, policing neighbourhoods, becoming part of a community. They shouldn't be sitting at the office making clever clogs things on social media. It's ridiculous.
Or turning up at people's houses for a hurty Facebook post.
Oh, honestly, somebody's got to take a grip of this, and hopefully the Met new commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, will. He seems to be tackling things, but of course the proof is in whatever happens to it.
Well, I don't want to use the W word with abandon, Alice, but I just wonder whether the police force is now institutionally woke.
Well, there's definitely an institutional problem here, but I think it's particularly pervasive in London, where we have such a strong crime epidemic, really, and especially in more impoverished areas, with knife crime and children being involved in really serious crime here. And yet we see police, on social media, these things blow up of them visiting people for a mean tweet.
Or misgendering a paedophile.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, it is taxpayers' money which is being wasted here. And taxpayers' money as police, like, in their thousands go to, you know, look at protesters. And it's not really acceptable at this point, so...
I mean, do you feel protected by the police?
I personally don't look to the police for protection, especially in London. I've had my phone stolen, nothing was done. I know that there are people currently who are undergoing severe issues with stalkers and with really intense violence, and nothing is being done about it either. And, you know, we've had so many stories of even muggings and things, and just nothing happens. These crimes are reported, nothing happens. So there's something severely wrong with our system.
Well, we talked earlier, didn't we, Andy, about the NHS in crisis. I just wonder whether the public are going to suffer a crisis of confidence in relation to the police if things don't change pretty fast.
I think I can sort this out. Little bit radical, but hear me out. Hope we don't get taken off air. How about you don't tweet when you're working? It's difficult, I know. Don't tweet when... Work! Don't tweet. When you're having a break, tweet. When you're working, don't tweet. Thank you, Andy Ford, GBNews.
Look, nicely done. I think you'll go down in history for that one.
Thank you, lover.
Well, I think it's a great solution. And we know that forces go online because they want to send out a message about tolerance. And obviously, we all don't want hate crime happening in our country. No. But the public will feel that this focus on these sort of digital crimes are at the expense of people being mugged for their phones or drug dealers in the street terrorising locals.
Yeah, but in the end, the police are there. Without them, we'd be in a worse state. And I don't think it's right just to keep hammering them. Yeah, there are problems. There's too much social media. People are on the phones all the flipping time. And I just think you should go back to doing your work. When it's work time, it's work time, and in between is leisure
But I
time.
think they often tweet in an official capacity, you know, and they're
sending... But they're also, I think they're trying to sort of communicate and show that we are, you know, they're part of the digital age. But that's not it. They should be making proper relationships within the community. They should be visible, a visible presence. And I think women in particular, young women in particular, are very wary of the police. Sarah Everard. That, you know, that really shook people, and women in particular.
Yeah, I mean, also, my thought is that, you know, I'm a big libertarian. So, for example, I'm very supportive of LGBTQ plus rights. If you can fall in love with whoever you want to, and we live in a free country. So that's my strong view. But why is it the police's job to perpetuate that message? You know, my view is that it's their job to make the country safer, not to make the world a better place.
I agree. They're not moral police, after all. They're supposed to be actually doing a tangible job. And as the point was made just earlier, they need to be in the community as a tangible presence for protection and for safety. And at the moment, you know, as much as, you know, the digital world is taking over to a certain extent, at the end of the day, you know, crimes and gangs, that is something really real to communities, and much more real than hate crime tweets will ever be. So if you're suffering in a neighbourhood with crime, that is going to be at the top of your priority list. So no wonder people are becoming increasingly frustrated.
You do wonder about that, don't you? Another story in the Daily Telegraph, and actually there are two stories that dovetail the Express and the Telegraph, but the Telegraph are leading with pension age move to 68 could disrupt retirement plans. Meanwhile, in the Express, parents raid pensions to bail out loved ones. Nina, is the dream of early retirement dead?
I would have thought so. I mean, this is... But also, it's quite fair because people are maintaining their health for longer. So, you know, when I was, you know, when dinosaurs roamed the earth and I was much, much younger, the age of 40, a woman was finished. That was it. You were over. You know, that was it. But, you know, we can all, if you've got your health, you can go on working. I mean, it's lovely to be able to put your feet up, but honestly, people can't afford it.
But aren't people that worked hard and paid into those pensions, haven't they been shortchanged if they've suddenly got to work till 68, for example?
It's true that there'll have to be some kind of phasing in, as it were. But as I'm way past that age now, I can see how it's done. But, I mean, retirement age used to be 60. That was it. Now it's crept up every year. And if we're getting healthier and healthier, then why not?
We're living longer. 60 is the new 40 and all that
I
sort
think
of
this
stuff.
is terribly unfair, and I'm worried about the Conservative voter base because this will be most of their voters, pensioners who've paid into their pension for many years, and I think this is a great betrayal of those voters. And I don't think this is going to reflect well on the Conservatives in the next election.
Many of whom are bankrolling their kids' futures now by dipping into those pensions to get them on the housing ladder or even just to pay their bills.
It's really shocking.
Sad.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The days of, you save for your pension, you took retirement, age of 60, then you put your feet up, and that was it. But the thing is, actually, it's very good if you can keep on working because a lot of people, they retire and within 2 years, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to retire. I love what I do is my hobby and my job. I can't, I'll do a Tommy Cooper in the end. I'll finish on the stage. Were you?
I was in the theatre that
Oh,
night.
my hero.
My goodness, when he
live
died.
at Her Majesty's?
Live at Her Majesty's, yeah. And
I was watching live on telly.
I was sitting there in the audience, and we couldn't quite believe what had happened because they brought the curtain down, but we could just sort of see that he was still. We could see a shape lying there. No, you could see, the
shape in the curtain.
You could see the shape that he was still lying there. And Jimmy Tarbuck had to come on, after the break and just, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And it was just the most awful night.
And at first people thought he was joking because he made this snoring sound,
Absolutely.
didn't he?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I can put more meat on the bones there because a very good friend of mine, Les Dennis, was on that show.
With Dustin G.
With Dustin G.
Yeah.
And when that happened, they weren't meant to be on for a while, and they just said to him, "You're on, Jimmy out."
That's how I knew it was something radically wrong because I was a mate of Les and Dustin, and I knew their act was not. It was the whole stage, and they were brought on in front of the curtain.
The show must go on.
Yeah, it was very sad to behold. Of course, this man died at the top and died doing what he loved. Well, look, we'll get to more stories from the papers very shortly. Do we demonise people on benefits? And are you supposed to be friends with your work colleagues? See you shortly.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Reacting to tomorrow's papers, we have political commentator Alice Grant. We have journalist and author Nina Mishkov. And comedian and king of panto Andy Ford. Andy, before we get to our next story, is your panto sold out this year?
I don't know.
Well, why don't we do a plug for it, just in case it's not?
Yes, it's at the Bristol Hippodrome in Cinderella with Craig Revel-Howard and me as Buttons, and it's hilarious. We've been all day today, which is why I might look a little bit wired. We've been rehearsing all day long, and we only get 9 days of full rehearsal, and it's going to be a really funny show. Thank you for that, Mark.
There you go. Cinderella, Bristol Hippodrome. There you go. Get your ticket. The hot ticket for the Christmas season, and we could all do with a bit of a giggle, couldn't we? A 48-year-old woman has described the heartache she's felt after being rejected by men for being on benefits. She's been branded a parasite by potential matches after they find out that she's unemployed and on disability allowance. So it begs the question, does society demonise people on benefits? I think the answer to that, Andy, is yes.
Well, I think those blokes are Burks. Was that too easy?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're looking at you in that way because they don't know anything about your life, particularly if it's the first time you met, and that's what they come up with, you're better off out of there. Some blokes are idiots, aren't they?
Well, they are. And the thing is, though, we've seen it, haven't we, with landlords who won't take tenants who are on housing support.
It's bonkers. We are a very snobby society. We are very judgmental. Yeah. But in terms of kind of online dating, which didn't exist in my day, and perhaps more's the better for it.
Was it all arranged by your mother back in the day?
No, your friend, whoever you met at work, or your friends, or
of course.
whatever, you know. But anyway, the thing is that if you watch a couple on first, that lovely programme First Dates. Have you ever watched that?
Yeah.
No, it's great fun. But you look at somebody, and if somebody said, "I'm on benefits," I'm sure the audience just goes, "Oh, really?" But what it proves is that how many ghastly men there are out there. Isn't it dreadful? This woman has a heart condition, for heaven's sake. It's not like she's lying on the sofa, lazy, stuffing her face with donuts and
you can't tell just by looking at the young lady.
No, you can't. But it just shows you how many repulsive people there are. There really are. It's just shocking what young women have to go through.
Repulsive, Alice, or honest?
No, I agree with the panel. I think that it's quite sad that there's such prejudice in our society. Of course, I feel like this is sadly going to increase as well as the cost of living crisis increases and the working population feel as though that they're supporting, they're paying into like the stereotype of lazy people who can't work, but actually there is a reason for the welfare state. And it is to support
I think the fact that this woman has some disabilities is definitely a game changer, and I think you're totally right that they are idiots for rejecting her in that way. But in relation to just if you're looking for someone to sort of fall in love with, don't you want them to be a bit of a high achiever? I mean, would you date a guy on the dole?
No comment.
You cannot be on a panel and say no comment. I'm sorry, that's against the rules.
Well, I think we can read between the lines, can't we, Nina? I've only got a couple of seconds. The brilliant Andrew Doyle is next for headliners at 11. But can you and should you be friends with a colleague? A man in France lost his job because he wouldn't go for a beer after work. So should you be? I mean, have you been mates with colleagues? You've been in Fleet Street.
Yes,
those people are dreadful.
Great fun, absolutely. And I wouldn't have missed any of those evenings.
Do you need to be mates with your colleagues in order to do your job well?
No, not really. But on the other hand, an atmosphere can develop if the people are being, they think, standoffish in some way and rejecting it. But that's why I have office phobia. I haven't worked in an office since 1984 or something. So, and I don't want to be a part of that. But I like to work with people I like. So this way I can choose to come onto your show because I like you, but I choose to go on not to go on somebody's shows because I don't like them. I have that luxury. But you know, but women have always been discriminated in the past because it used to be that men used to go out and play golf, and women didn't join in, so they could do lots of deals and business over golf. Or men go out to strip clubs. That was the other thing in the city.
Yeah.
I know, shocking, isn't it? And women obviously weren't part of that. So, you know, it is tricky in the office. It really is. That's why I've avoided it for decades.
Well, there is that unspoken pressure, isn't it, to sort of go out with the team after work or do the Secret Santa or have a whip round for Maureen's birthday.
Yeah, but
why can't you just go to work and go home?
I don't do a normal job, and if you try and not be friendly with people in my business, for example, in the banter we're doing now, if you try and hide yourself away, that don't work. We're all there, darling. So
yeah, well, that's it. Especially Craig Revel Horwood. What an upstart he can be. Alice, couple of seconds. Should we be friends with colleagues?
Well, I think it's not a good symptom of a healthy society if you feel forced to have to hang out.
Exactly. Freedom rules. Yeah. Andrew Doyle is next with Headliners. Thanks to my brilliant panel and you for your company.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being